Welcome to the Seahawks Draft Blog live stream. Rob Staten, Adam, and Robbie with us to discuss everything that's been going on. I have seen very little of the game. I was broadcasting nationally on the Chiefs Bengals, which was a fantastic game, by the way. Thoroughly enjoyed that, and was keeping half an eye on Red Zone just to sort of see how the Seahawks were getting on, and saw the occasional play. Saw the Bobby Wagner interception and a few other plays. Saw DK Metcalf owning Jalen Ramsey on that final touchdown play. Jalen Ramsey, DK Metcalf, good to see. But apart from that, I've not seen an awful lot. And I'm reliably informed that the defense did not look good in the first half. So I'm going to hand off here to Robbie, who's going to tell us basically what the story of the game was, because I've not seen that much of it. Robbie, paint the picture for us.
Well, I mean, we start right out, the Rams come down and put 7 right on the board. So, I mean, if that gives you any kind of indication, kind of how it started out on the defensive side of the ball, Cam Akers was running all up and down the field. And we made made no effort to stop him running the football. Quite embarrassing. We went down, scored again. They came back and had a chance to get a first down. They made some weird play call and then had to settle for a field goal. And then we took the lead again, and then they got another field goal basically in that half. But if any indication, I think I saw a stat that said Wolford was 9 for 10 for 98 yards in the first half, and then 1 for 12 in the second half at some point starting out. So, I mean, he started out and hit a couple shots, but really it's just a run game. We literally cannot stop the run, and I honestly don't know why the Rams didn't run the ball every single play. They should have. I don't know why they let Wolford even throw. They didn't need to.
Wow. Before we go any further, yeah, I like this comment here. Always a good day when England and the Seahawks win. I agree with that. I'm sure Adam will second those thoughts. And Harry Kane scored, which is even better from an Adam point of view, given that he's Spurs' top player. We've got a super chat here, which I'm going to come straight to. RJ says DK should give the game-winning ball to his son Ramsey. I agree, as a souvenir. Go Hawks. Love the stream, says RJ, and we love your support as well. If you've got a super chat, if you want to make a statement on the game, if you want to pass on a thought, if you've got a question, then super chat away. That is the way.
Hey, Rob, throw this one up real fast. OD Death Metal. Throw that one up real fast.
There you go.
Hey, giving Geno credit. Came down in the fourth quarter, sealed the deal. He played with some moxie today. He had a couple really questionable plays, but for the most part, man, I tell you what, he played well. I was impressed.
I'm a bit confused though as to at what point has Geno not been getting the credit? I mean, for weeks, Adam, it's been a Geno loving.
I don't know. Yeah. I just thought maybe I'd give him another one. Sorry, go ahead, Adam.
Like I think that maybe the poster there is leading towards the fact that we've discussed, what sort of contract would you give him? Has he shown enough to deserve it? And I don't think that's been an unfair discussion, but I think the fact that we're even having it would suggest that we think he's outperformed expectations dramatically, really, when you think of what we saw last year. And I tweeted just before the final drive that, it's a bit unfair, but every week there's a referendum on whether Geno Smith is good enough to be the Seattle quarterback. And again, it's unfair, but quarterbacks make or lose their money off what they do when their team needs them to put a drive together at the end of the fourth quarter. And fair play to Geno, because it was the one thing he didn't have on his resume as a Seahawks starting quarterback. And he amazingly did it today, man. 65 yards in about 7 plays. I mean, take the interception away from his stat line, and it's absolutely phenomenal. Not playing against the greatest team he'll ever see, but, no running backs really. So basically everyone knew that Geno had to put the team on his back and do it. And he did. So fair play to Geno. He was absolutely superb. And I'm fully at peace now with extension talks and what comes from it. I think I've seen enough, and not that I'm in any way important, but I declare that I've seen enough.
Adam has declared it. Yeah, he's declared it. Therefore it is done. We've set a new record today, by the way, on the stream. It is 4 minutes and about 34 seconds for somebody mentioning Michael Penix. So that is the new record that we have achieved today. We've got another super chat from David. The final knock on Geno, that he had never led the Seahawks on a game-winning drive, has been dealt with in the game. Yeah, great to see. Fantastic for Geno Smith. Really happy that what I'm hearing from everybody who's watched the whole game, as opposed to me who just saw the odd play here and there, is that he's had a good game. Can somebody, Robbie, tell me what is this issue with Ken Walker then? Because I was kind of following it a little bit on Twitter. I was having a look and people were saying there's no news on Ken Walker. He's kind of just sat on the sideline. And then there was talk of his teammates were coming over to console him. And I saw him walking into the tunnel at one point on red zone, but I mean, he wasn't limping noticeably. He was just walking. So I'm thinking, what is this? Because on the one hand, I'm reading things that make me think he's out for the season. And then on the other hand, I'm looking at a guy who's walking, strolling into the locker room. And then he was on the sideline afterwards in street clothes, or what the NFL calls street clothes. I mean, he was in a team tracksuit. But he didn't look like a player who needed to be rushed off to hospital with a serious injury. So what are we talking about here, Robbie? How serious is this?
Well, it was a non-contact play, right? So he was running and he tried to cut down the sideline away from a guy, and he just kind of came up, kind of hobbling a little bit, and then went over to the side. And they said they were putting things in his shoes, like some sort of padding in his shoes, but he wouldn't stand up on it. And then when he finally did, he just sat back down. So I'm not really sure. I haven't seen anything on it yet, so I'm not really positive on what that would be. But yeah, it didn't seem like it was all that serious. But I mean, the tale of running backs going down afterwards was sure entertaining, I guess, because you had DJ Dallas go down, then Travis Jones was running back at some point, then he went down right away, and at some point I was like, who's going to line up a running back? Lockett, or what are they going to do here? So it was pretty interesting to see kind of what happened, but I'm not really sure as far as what happened with Walker. There was an interesting tidbit that happened earlier in the game, Rob, that you might want to go back and take a look at. Him and Geno got into it. They were like yelling at each other over something. And I'm not really sure.
That.
Yeah. So that was interesting.
I'm
not really sure.
No.
I don't know if it was he changed the play or.
I can only imagine that they were planning to watch the England game afterwards, and Geno spoiled the score. That's the only thing I can imagine. That
had to have been
a reaction.
How dare you?
Well, that is interesting. Apparently, I'm just looking at Bob Condota's Twitter timeline, and Pete Carroll said 10 minutes ago that Walker jammed his ankle, but doesn't yet know what it means. And I think somebody has said in the live chat that it wasn't a sprain, but they don't know what it is yet. As someone who has had 3 broken ankles and then sprained the other one, I hope it's not a sprained ankle. You know, the broken ankle I was playing sport against in 6 weeks, and with the sprain I didn't play for a year. So I really hope that this is not a sprain. Curious though, a jammed ankle.
He has got a way of just inventing new injury terms, doesn't he? Like, he almost makes it more convoluted in trying to explain stuff. I think that's probably what he does try to do with a lot of stuff, but it's like he has an entire synonym book of injury terms that actually don't mean a thing.
Apparently the issue between Geno Smith, Jason has said this in the live chat, is because Walker missed a blitz pickup on the sack. So that's why. But do you know what? I don't mind that. You know, the last thing I want to see is a team full of people just being nice to each other all the time. You know, I like to see people getting into it. If someone's not done their job, it is up to the quarterback to go over there and say, you are not doing your job. You're going to get me killed and we're going to lose this game. So if Geno Smith's gone over to Ken Walker and said, listen, rookie, you do your job, I'm down with that. I'm on team Geno in that regard. So yeah, I'm up for a bit of that. Look, I was trying to weigh it up because I'm seeing the Seahawks are trailing, Robbie, late in the game. And I'm thinking the Rams are probably a couple more injuries away from asking one of us to play for them, because that's how banged up they were. You know, they've not got Aaron Donald, they've not got Cooper Kupp, they've not got Matt Stafford. There's probably a whole bunch of other players that I'm not. The O-line's all gone. Right? So this is a team that you would sort of think is there to be beaten handily. And yet I'm looking, and they need a game-winning drive right at the end to get the job done. So off the back of 2 defeats, how do we feel about this game? Because they were that close to losing. and going to 3 defeats. So they've had 2, and if they'd have lost this game, we all know what the reaction would have been this week. It would have been huge, wow, people would have been talking about firing Clint Hurt and the defensive scheme, and people would have been questioning Pete Carroll and maybe even Geno and stuff like that if they'd have lost to this version of the Rams. But because they've only beaten them by that much, how do we view this? Where are the Seahawks? They're 7-5. They're still very much in the divisional race. They're still in the playoff hunt. But are they really? You two tell me. What do you think?
I think, first of all, I mean, and Adam and I were kind of talking about this right before the start of the stream, is that, the Rams are well coached. They're a divisional rival, right? We're always going to play, even if the Cardinals are, terrible. We always just seem to play them close. They play us close. Just, we know each other so well. Again, the Rams had us if they just would have ran the football all day. I don't know why they didn't. And, I just think, it could come down to a couple of different things. I don't know how I feel about, going forward with the rest of the season. I'm happy to have gotten today with a win, but you start looking at the schedule, it doesn't get a whole lot easier. You get to play the Rams one more time. But again, as you just said, it didn't prove to be all that easy. And, we got some tough games ahead of us. And I'm not looking at this as a potential. I think this is a team that's just going to miss the playoffs. And that's the kind of the team I feel like it is. It's a team that's just going to miss the playoffs. And it's just going to be like, if there was a couple more wins, that New Orleans or Atlanta game, we would have been right there. But I think at this point, we're probably at the point where, we had to win today. We had to. And so, I mean, that's step one. But I feel like we're just a team that's just, we're missing too many key pieces, too many guys to step up to really make us a real playoff contender.
I mean, I suppose that is the injuries are a huge part of it. It is often who is the healthiest team at the end of the year that can have the best chance of a run. I'm going to just have a look at the playoff picture now, Adam, because the Seahawks are currently the 7th seed. The Commanders tied with the Giants today, and the Commanders, the Seahawks are basically an NFC East sandwich at the minute, because the Giants are the 6th seed and the Commanders are the 8th seed, and the Seahawks are sandwiched in between as the 7th seed. Let's just assume that Dallas are going to be one of the wild card teams. So then it is going to come down to probably the Giants, the Seahawks, and the Commanders as to who gets in. That is the battle. And I know Robbie's saying they're just going to miss out. If you give me that battle now, if it's between those 3, I'm picking the Seahawks to be one of those 3 to go through.
Yeah, as Geno trotted out to start that final drive, I was thinking that, often on this show we've discussed trying to separate sort of the fan hat out from not the podcaster hat, but the analyst, in the sense of, every game we watch, we're trying to look at it of, is this another step on the ladder towards the future, or is it sort of a snake that takes you back down to, a place where you thought you were going to be? And I wondered when Geno trotted out if the result of the drive was going to impact my emotions that much, because I kind of felt like I've seen the team put up a bit of a stinker against possibly the worst team they'll play this year in terms of guys on the field against them. So, how up for it can you really get for that? And then Geno puts together just this like fairy tale drive, to be honest, and it culminates in DK Metcalf, maybe for one of the first times in his career, really getting one over Jalen Ramsey, because Ramsey mentally has had his number. And again, today he baited DK into a penalty, which I think
was soft. It was a soft penalty.
Look, it was soft, but it happened. But to see it and to see the happiness and to see Pete, it kind of fused my two sort of fandom and podcast personalities together. And I just thought it was great. And it was a really nice story. And I'm so much more buoyant than I thought I was going to be, because I think losing those 3 games in a row would have really felt like very deflating. But it's nice to see that they were able to, put the big boy pants on and go out there and get it done. And, I think that's going to mean a lot to the players, and I hope they can carry that through. Especially, I've just seen in the chat that someone says Jimmy Garoppolo is out for the season. I don't know if that's true or not. But if it is,
broken foot, he's out.
It's dreadful for him. But
but hilarious for us.
Yeah, well, let's call it what it is. That makes potentially the 4-2 that you looked at for the remaining 6 games Let's go win it, make it 5-1. I mean, who cares? Let's go and do it. And we can apologize for winning, but ultimately, if it gets you into the playoffs, who cares? Let's just keep riding it. Let's ride it.
Let's ride.
Go on.
Hey, by the way, there's a Andrew A. Will you put that one up? He said if we lost, it makes Denver pick better. Just saying.
Yeah. So
that's actually not true.
Well, I was going to say, I was going to come on to that. So we'll keep your powder dry there, Robbie.
I'm so excited.
It's on the way. But there is a lot to be excited about today. So first of all, I just want to say, having not seen any of the game and kind of having watched it through the prism of, I don't really care, because if they lose, so what? They lost 2 in a row. If they win, England's won. That's all I'm really, with the greatest respect, that was the key thing for me today. It was an England win, and England won, so it was fine. And they'd won by half time, which made it even better because I could prepare for the Chiefs Bengals. So that was all good. The Broncos, I'm watching them just before we went on air. That game finished about 40 seconds before we went air for the Chiefs Bengals game. And I'm watching it and I'm thinking, surely, I know that Lamar Jackson was hurt. Surely they're not going to lose to the Broncos, the Ravens. Surely they're not. And I'm watching that drive. I've got it on Game Pass. So I'm watching everything. And I'm watching them finish that drive, and Tyler Huntley gets into the end zone. And even then, Russell Wilson manages to get him into a range where you're just not quite comfortable. Are they going to kick the field goal or not? And it comes up short. And I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. Another loss for the Broncos. A loss that I'd assumed was coming, Robbie and Adam. I assumed they were, even before that game kicked off, I thought there's no way that the Ravens are not going to win this game. And they were that close to losing it. But they won it. So the Broncos lose again. And the great thing is I'm going to get this up now. I'm going to do this now and share the screen so that you can see, even though the Rams and the Broncos both lost, it has changed the complexion of the Tankathon draft order. You can see that because of strength, it's actually disappeared off the screen. There, it's back now. So because of the strength of schedule adjusting and changing, the Broncos have actually leapfrogged the Rams into the number 3 pick. The Seahawks pick has improved, even though both teams lost. So
it's fantastic.
So even if the Rams would have won that game, the Seahawks still would have been the 3rd overall pick. The Seahawks win the game anyway, and the Seahawks get the 3rd overall pick anyway. So there we go. Houston number 1. Chicago, I thought they were going to win at one point, but they've lost again. They've lost 6 in a row now. But Justin Fields is playing his heart out, so they've got a chance to win a few more games. And Denver scored another 9 points. It's another one of those games where if they'd just scored 4 field goals, they'd have won the game. Russ just cannot. I mean, like, we have this little joke in England where when a player for a football team, a soccer team, goes and plays somewhere else, or a manager goes and manages and coaches somewhere else, we call them agent so-and-so. It's almost like it's agent Russell Wilson, like he's been deployed to go into the Broncos, secure a fantastic top 5 pick for the Seahawks, and he's in on the act. It's starting to feel that way, Robbie.
Yeah, I totally agree. And this is kind of what I was shocked to see, because last week the strength of schedule, to see it change just after one game, it's pretty exciting. I mean, to have both teams lose, to have it go how we wish it would have went last week, to have the Seahawks win, and then to have the Broncos lose and end up with that, still have that 3rd pick. It's good stuff.
Adam, it's just incredible, isn't it? Another game where they only needed to score 11 points to win, and the Broncos can't even do that.
Well, an amazing phenomenon happened to me this evening, and something that I didn't think was possible did happen. So I happened to be driving back from a friend's house after the England game, and I tuned into BBC Radio 5 Live Sports Extra, and lo and behold, coming through my car radio was Mr. Rob Staten. And I don't know how lucid you are or how often you remember kind of exactly conversations you're having on the air, but you were chopping up with your pal Greg about the Broncos, and Greg was saying, well, look, Russell Wilson's not had a great year, but, they're doing so poorly that their 1st round pick is going to be, give them a great chance to get a great player. And listeners, I don't know if you knew this, but I actually could hear Rob's grin through the radio as he said, Greg, I have to just tell you, no, that's the Seahawks pick. because the Broncos traded for Russell Wilson. And Greg, I could see him sort of sit back in his chair, put his hands on his head, and think, "Oh my goodness, they are absolutely knackered." But Rob, you tried to remain vaguely impartial, but I could hear you smile through the radio, and it was one of the great radio moments. And I'm so pleased that I was able to be a part of it and be the listener at the time.
Hey, listen, I've had a great day. We went on a Christmas train with the kids earlier. I watched England win a World Cup game. I watched the Broncos lose. And then I didn't watch the Seahawks win. I mean, I missed that bit, but I saw the key pass at the end, which, based on what Robbie said, might have been the best bit to watch. It was the bit at the end. And I am troubled somewhat by the defense. I want to get back onto that in a second, but it's just, it's incredible. And we usually kind of save this stuff to the end, but I will say it now. If people I've seen a lot of it, Jalen Carter was fantastic yesterday for Georgia. He was absolutely fantastic. He was unstoppable again. I think there's a distinct possibility that you need to get above the Bears. First and foremost, you need to be above the Bears, or he's going to be playing in Chicago next year. So you better hope that Justin Fields can win a few games, which he's capable of based on what he's showing. But you better hope to get above the Bears if you want Jalen Carter. And then you've got to hope that Houston is so zoned in on a quarterback that they don't take him. And I'm just starting to wonder a little bit whether he's playing so well that Houston might take him at 1 and take the chances with their second pick on a quarterback. Or I've been saying they might go after Jimmy Garoppolo, but after another season-ending injury, I'm getting to the point where I don't know how much you can trust the guy. So if you want Jalen Carter, then you're going to have to be higher than number 3, I think. But what I will say is that if you are inclined to believe in Will Anderson, or if you want a different player, then you're in a great position to do that. No, please, I don't want to hear any more about Miles Murphy, though. Having watched Clemson play another powder puff game on the defensive line yesterday and watched Miles Murphy, pussycat is the correct term for him. I'm just going to say that, although at least Brian Bresee played a little bit better. What do they do at running back, Rob? Actually, hold that thought, because we've got a couple of super chats. Big Mike says, support the site, folks. Big thank you to Big Mike, big supporter of the blog and the channel. Big thank you there, Mike. Yep, please get those super chats in. And we had another one. I'm a bit behind on the comments from Max. I'm just so bloody happy. England win, and then I watched the Hawks beat the Rams in LA, and DK gets the winning touchdown over Ramsey. I am pumped. Let's enjoy. I agree, Max. Well said. That is a fantastic super chat. I'm going to put it up again. It warrants a second viewing. Fantastic, Max. Thank you for your support as well. The only way that the day could have been better is if the Miami Dolphins would have beaten Brock Purdy. But, maybe that's to come, because Brock Purdy ain't Jimmy G. I mean, look, fair play to Kyle Shanahan. He might get him through it, but he ain't Jimmy G, and Jimmy G can manage that offense a little bit. So we'll see. We'll see how they get on. It's going to be Brock Purdy in Seattle in 2 weeks' time unless he gets injured next week. Y2KHA says, when will teams learn? Don't test Tariq Woolen. Another interception. He broke the franchise record for rookie interceptions today by getting to 6, which is brilliant from him.
He also broke back on 2 passes. Like, he just navigated, saw what was going on, diagnosed what was happening, and just turned himself around on 2 routes that were easy completions against any mortal cornerback. And the interception, it's amazing for his numbers, but I thought those 2 plays were perhaps the 2 most impressive plays any Seahawks player had today.
I agree, Adam. There was one angle that they showed where Wolford was like, they had his back angle, or you could see him. You could see the receiver turn, looked like it was open. He threw the ball and he cut in on it, and it was phenomenal.
Well, this is just great, because this is what the Seahawks need. As we talk about it, and look, we can combine scheme and talent and say that both may be inadequate right now. But they need talent. They need to find players. And as they go along, it's great that the Broncos are giving them 2 more high picks next year. They're going to have to find guys, though, aren't they? They're going to have to find people 3rd round, 4th round, 5th round, 6th round who can, not necessarily do what Tariq Woolen's doing, but they're going to have to contribute. They're going to have to do more than some of the other guys they've taken in the middle rounds over the years. So fantastic. Great to hear. I saw his interception on Red Zone, and I saw a couple of the pass breakups. Great to hear that he's doing well. The offense has obviously got a lot of weapons on there, but to sort of come back to what I was going to say, Robbie, what are the Seahawks going to do? Let's assume that Ken Walker misses a bit of time here. DJ Dallas left the game as well. Is Travis Homer I mean, he was ill today, wasn't he? So he couldn't play. Is he enough? You know, can he? I mean, he's bigger. I think he looks a bit better than he has in previous years, and he might be able to hold the fort against the Panthers coming up, and maybe they can get through the Niners game as well. But I think if you're going to need a bit more than that, I think if you're talking about playoff football here.
Yeah, it really comes down to how long he's going to be out. I think you can manage a week or two with DJ Dallas and Travis Homer if they're both back and okay. I mean, I imagine they'll probably bring someone in to look at and maybe be, be there to put on the practice squad just in case they need to elevate him for the practice squad and see. I see a lot of people are in the chat are saying like, "Oh, bring Lynch back." That's not happening. He's not going to come back.
Marshawn is, I think he's a little out of football shape these days.
Yeah, they're not bringing him back. But, I mean, hey, it would be fun to see. But, I mean, I think realistically that's probably not going to happen. So, I think it really – if those guys are out long-term, I know a lot of people are saying Melvin Gordon because I think he's on the practice squad right now for another team. So, technically
where did he end up? Because he was at the Chiefs. So is he on their practice squad?
I think he's on their practice squad. So essentially you could go sign him off their practice squad and put him on your 53-man roster.
Made the call.
I mean, it really just depends on who they're looking for. So I imagine they'll be bringing some people in this week.
I mean, it's got a double whammy there, Adam, because you're not only bringing him in, but he'll have the bit between his teeth after what happened in Denver. He was basically getting blamed for the offense. And, he has too many fumbles, and Pete Carroll's not going to like that. But he would be – I mean, that guy's going to be pissed off with what happened with the Broncos. He's going to be coming into Seattle with a bit of fire in his belly. And for somebody who's – there's a lot worse players out there than Melvin Gordon you could bring in week 14 to come and run you a few carries, isn't there? I mean, if he is on the practice squad for the Chiefs and if they're not elevating him this week, go and get the guy.
Oh, if only for the narrative. I mean, let's just continue this wonderful Broncos Seahawks relationship from the last 12 months. I mean, it would be at worst funny. So I'm all for it. I think I was fairly impressed by how Tony Jones ran kind of north to south downhill.
Travis Jones? I don't know. Maybe you're right.
Maybe in the comments they can tell us. I thought it was Tony Jones who was the Saints running back that they picked up, who I think was number 32 that came out. I thought he ran pretty well. Was probably unlucky to be given a few like dump offs and screens, which I can't imagine he's practiced many times, and that's where it didn't look too clean. But I mean, Rob, we were saying on Twitter this week that obviously Kenneth Walker's been amazing, but I think we both agreed we were a smidge concerned by he was looking to bounce a lot outside and he was looking to kind of make plays, maybe not trusting his blockers. And as you do approach the playoffs, man, it's a bit cliche, but you do kind of need that first and second down guy to just smash through his blocks and just kind of see what he's doing. And having seen a lot of he's furious. Having seen a lot of Seahawks run games collapse after the first guy goes down, I was quite optimistic to see how the backups ran today.
We love a bit of dog interaction. Mine are obviously not here. Usually they are in the room with me, and we know Robbie's dogs like to get involved in the streams as well. So love a bit of dog input, and I think they were just telling you which running back they've got to go and draft coming up in the upcoming draft. There, I mean that is a little bit of a thing, and I agree with you completely on Ken Walker. But to sort of look at the running stats, so 90 yards off 22 carries. It's another game where the opponent has run the ball a lot better than Seattle. Whether it's a scheme or a talent or whatever it is Robbie, at the moment the Seahawks are not running the ball very well. So give us a thought on that. And then off the back of that, I want to ask you two guys whether the injuries this year that Seattle have had at running back and the importance of the position to Seattle. And I think it is very important to Seattle. I know there's a lot of people out there who don't think it's very important these days, but I still think it is. I want to ask you a little bit about what they should do in the upcoming off-season as well. But, how concerning is the lack of production in the running game, Robbie, which, they might not have lost 3 in a row, but they've had 3 pretty crappy running games in a row statistically anyway.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to like what I'm about to say, Rob, but I think it starts at the center position. We've seen a lot of people already saying it here. The center position is absolute garbage. He proved today he had an opportunity. He was the lead block on like a little screen pass, and he had an opportunity to block two guys and just whiffed on both. He was trying to get to the third level too soon and didn't block anybody. And we ended up getting tackled. I mean, it was still a game, but it was not good. I think it starts at the center position and goes from there. I think he's not really able to see the protections as well. Geno's having to change out of a lot of things, but I think it starts at that center position and then it works its way down the line.
Interesting that. Yeah. I mean, I've been watching a lot of Cedric Van Pran. I've moved him to the top of my center board. I'll republish it. I've not changed that much on the board. There's just a few players that have kind of moved up and a few down. It's a handful at most. But Cedric Van Pran is definitely someone who's moved up. I don't know if he's going to declare. I would suggest if Georgia win the national championship and have an undefeated season and winning back-to-back national championships, there's not really that much left for him to achieve in college, and he'd be better off going for the pros, but we'll see. I mean, it also depends what he's hearing in terms of grade. But, people would say, would you take a center early? My answer has been no, because the fit hasn't quite been there. And there are certain players that I'm not that crazy about taking early. But if you told me Cedric Van Pran in round 2, I would be down with that. I think he's good enough to warrant that kind of a grade. I really like the Georgia center Cedric Van Pran. I think we've lost Robbie for a second. We will come back to Robbie very, very shortly. But Adam and I can move on to what I was going to talk about next.
Can I give you like a silly hypothetical, given that
Absolutely.
Robbie's not here, and so we can just be a bit whimsical? Seahawks, we've got shed load of picks, obviously. Do you think this year you'd rather have the draft before free agency so you can kind of set where you are in the draft? And then do you think, obviously you're going to pick based off what you do or don't have after free agency, but in this of all years, it kind of feels like you'd like to see what young guys you pick up first before having to dip into free agency, or do you not think it makes much of a difference this year?
I think with this offseason, it's a little bit different because the Seahawks obviously do not have a great deal of money to spend. People have been talking about how much you pay Geno Smith. Geno Smith's going to eat up a big chunk of your cap space. And my expectation of free agency is they're probably not going to do that much. They're probably going to lean on the draft to improve this team. It will be the usual kind of spending, and they'll probably prioritize keeping people like Poona Ford and people like that. Now, whether people think that's the right idea or not, I'm not suggesting that you sign Poona Ford and call it a day on the defensive line. But I don't think maybe losing Poona Ford is a great way to start a rebuild of a defensive line. You're probably better off keeping somebody like that and building from there rather than losing him and thinking, right off the bat, we've got to replace him. So, and obviously it would depend on cost. I don't think Poona Ford's going to get a massive contract off another team. So I think that should be a relatively straightforward deal. So I don't think they're going to do that much. Probably retain their own, including Geno Smith, and they'll try and get Drew Lock done. And then that will set up the draft. And Adam, my hope for the draft, and it remains the case, is simply to draft the best players that are there. I don't want them to reach on anything. My aim is not for the Seahawks to win the Super Bowl in 12 months' time. I want them to build up this roster. If they come out of the draft next year with a hole, I'm fine with that. I would have criticized them in the past when it was like they've got to win this year. But right now, I'm content. If they come out of it and they haven't been able to address a certain need because the board hasn't gone the right way or whatever, that's fine. Just draft the best players, improve your team, improve the depth and quality of your team, and let's just keep building this thing. I think that is so important. My biggest fear, genuinely, my biggest fear right now is that the Seahawks pick 4th or 5th overall. And it comes to it, and Jalen Carter and Will Anderson have gone, and they just take whoever's the next best defensive lineman. And people will celebrate that. I mean, I've been seeing people on Twitter saying, hey, Miles Murphy might be better than Will Anderson and Jalen Carter in the last couple of days. I've watched every Clemson game this year. He ain't. He might be a great athlete, but he ain't a great football player right now. So that's my concern. And I'd almost rather them, and this is it's a nice segue to what I was going to bring up with you guys, is what do they do at the running back position? Is it just a case of, do they need to just pad the depth and bring back Penny, draft another guy on day 3 or maybe sort of the 3rd round range and say, okay, that's enough? or do they need to be open-minded to the prospect of a high pick at running back? And by high pick, I mean first 2 rounds. And I'm not suggesting that they spend a first-round pick on a running back just for a laugh, for the shits and giggles of it. I'm talking about, if Bijan Robinson is there, might be the best player in the draft. Do you? And if you're picking 8th, let's say the Broncos find a way to get 2 or 3 wins, and you end up 6th, 7th, 8th, and your best defensive linemen and quarterbacks have gone. Do you take the best player in the draft at number 8 and say, okay, we're just going to live with it? Do you take a Zach Charbonnet in round 2? Do you draft somebody else in sort of round 2? Jahmyr Gibbs, I don't know. Do you wait? Kenny McIntosh, what a player. You could even make a case for him in round 2. Rodriguez at Kentucky, round 3, maybe. Or do you just go, no, we're not going to go down that road. We've spent the pick on Ken Walker. How do you feel about it, Robbie? Because I feel like that could end up being more of a discussion if the running game falls off a cliff now.
Yeah, I really like Bijan Robinson, but I think I have a hard time with getting on board with that pick, especially early. It's taken me a while, but I finally gotten to the point where now I'm like, okay, I could even settle with, not, and I say settle in terms of like, I was gung ho on the early pick being a quarterback for the longest time. And even with Geno playing this well, I've always been on, you need to take a quarterback. You need to take a quarterback. You don't get a chance to take them that early this often. But the reality is I've come around on taking a Will Anderson or Jalen Cotter and sitting back and waiting for a quarterback, because I still think there's some good talent, in the draft at the quarterback position. I think there's an opportunity to get someone later who maybe hasn't played as well, or maybe just needs a little bit of seasoning, and it could be actually a perfect scenario by sitting behind Geno. If you're sitting at that, 6 to 8 range, I hate to say it, but I still think you trade back. I don't think for me, I'm having a hard time getting on board with taking a running back that early after taking one in the second round. I just feel like we need, because if you draft him, you obviously, we talked about it, you take him off the field, on what, 3rd downs then, or what do you do? I think we have too many holes. I understand drafting the best player available, but also like that almost seems a little too rich for me at that position.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Adam, I'll ask you the same question in a second. What I want to say, it just popped into my head for some reason, and I just wanted to say this before I forget. I was listening to Pete Carroll last week, and Brock and Salk asked him about Michael Penix Jr., which is most unusual to ask. It's because he's the local quarterback, obviously. And Carroll said a couple of things that were very interesting during that interview relating to the draft. So they asked me about Michael Penix Jr., and Carroll complimented the Washington scheme. And I thought, interesting, because that's how I feel about it. I feel that if the Ohio State and Tennessee and Washington schemes are very similar, wide open. I'm seeing all this stuff, Penix for Heisman on Twitter. I'm thinking, well, just give the trophy to the offensive scheme. Give it to the coach then, because if you're going to give a quarterback in a spread offense like this the Heisman, then it's really the coach who deserves it, because it's the scheming and everything like that they create the situation for. So, and no offense to any Washington fans, that's just how I feel. Don't even ask me who I think should win the Heisman, because I don't think there's an obvious candidate this year. It's really hard to find somebody. And then the other thing he was asked about the USC Notre Dame game, and he made a point of highlighting Michael Mayer in that game. And I don't know, it just might be a complete coincidence, but he has caught Carroll's eye. Just wanted to note that he made a point of saying how good the Notre Dame tight end was. So just saying, just something to file for later, maybe, because Michael Mayer is a fantastic player, by the way. And I think he's almost a little bit underrated, actually, because I think people assume he's going to run so badly at the combine that he's not. But I tell you, he's got something about him. Wouldn't be surprised if he tests well in the important ranges. The agility testing is vital for a tight end. So running backs, Adam, how do we've heard Robbie's take. What do you feel about it? Because it is an important facet for Seattle, the running game.
Yeah, I think having just asked you, is it better to have free agency before the draft this time? Assuming they do get Geno Smith signed up, I'd probably see if you can get Rashad Penny back on the veteran minimum. And if you can, then, if they, I'd be disappointed. And again, I can only really speak hypothetically because I'm not as much of a draft nick as you guys are, but I'd be disappointed if, like, in the top 10, you couldn't find a player that over 5 years, because you have got that option year, wouldn't necessarily be a better fit for your team somewhere in another position. Like, running back is the only position that when you draft them, they are at their peak at that precise moment. And so having that 5-year stability, I think, can be really valuable for other positions, would perhaps less so for running back. Now, if Robinson was to fall to your second first-round pick at 19, then I presume you're going to say, well, obviously you just have to take him because he's quite clearly the best player. But I don't know. And again, I can't speak on a point of knowledge of players here. I'm just speaking purely hypothetically how I value the position. I'd be disappointed if the scouts couldn't find me someone better over 5 years as a top 10 pick.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I mean, and let's be fair, the only reason we're even having this conversation is because I think Bijan Robinson is the best player in the draft. If he wasn't there, we would not be talking about running backs early. And I think you're right, Adam. That, there's a real importance. Seattle's got to improve in the trenches. They've got to get better in the trenches, and whether that is center, or whether that is defensive line. I mean, look, the defensive line has to get better, and I want to move on to the defense again. And sort of, how do we feel? Because last week we were talking a lot about the scheme. We were talking about the scheme. Where do we go from here? I posted a video discussing, look, amongst the top 5 teams in DVOA, you've got the Jets, Robert Sala's defense. You've got the Niners, Robert Sala's old team. And you've got the Cowboys, Dan Quinn's team. These are teams that have come from the Carroll DNA in terms of defense. They're not the Vic Fangio DNA. The Seattle Seahawks have drifted towards that Fangio DNA, but there's no other sort of team. And you look at that, Brandon Staley's having a right time with the Chargers. Without Fangio, I'm not sure this scheme's going to work. And I get it, Robbie. There's a lack of talent on the defense. But if you can't stop the run, I mean, we're not talking that there's a difference here. If a team just can't rush the passer because it hasn't got a good pass rusher, that's one thing. But if you know that your run defense is crap, and you're saying, right, let's just nip that in the bud right now. Let's just make sure that we're better at defending the run. And you can't do it, even against a team that's basically feeling guys off the street on their offensive line and pulling Cam Akers, who was out the door a few weeks ago, and said, right, off you go, Cam, you run the ball. If you can't defend the run against this, what does that say about for the coaching, for the scheming, for this system? I mean, I am ready to move on, Robbie. I mean, I don't want to write things off, and I want to give them a fair crack. This defense improved for a little bit, and it's gone to crap again. And if you said to me they're going to spend the whole summer looking at what Dan Quinn's doing in Dallas, and they're going to look at what Robert Sala's doing and what D'Amico Ryans is doing in San Francisco, and I get it. They've got Bosa, they've got Quinnen Williams, they've got Micah Parsons, but you got a chance maybe to draft a good defensive player in the top 5, and you've got a chance with other players. You can find talent. What are they doing that works? Because one, it's closer to what Carroll knows, and 2, what they're doing right now ain't working. I think I'm without a dramatic change of events here, Robbie. I don't want to persevere with a crap scheme.
Yeah, I mean, you obviously need defensive tackles, and in my opinion, you need to remake the linebacker position. I feel like the linebackers are garbage. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. Cody Barton is just not good. He is not good. And they frustrate me. So anyway, I think the scheme, we talked a lot about the scheme, and I feel like, over the course of the year, we've seen it kind of change, and it hasn't been really what we kind of expected it to be coming out. Like, I don't see all these crazy blitzes or, anything like that. I just feel like the scheme just isn't working. I feel like they're trying to mix the schemes together. At this point, I'm over it too. Let's just, if we're going to run people, go back and get players that fit his scheme. I mean, even Darrell Taylor looks lost in the scheme. There are players out there who could play a lot better in a different scheme. And I think we have an opportunity with the team that we've already have to play a lot better with this team. But I think, my personal opinion starts with those linebackers. You got to get better linebackers, and we got to contain the edge with our DNs. And I think we have the talent there. I would love to see a beast defensive end, but we also need some guys to plug the hole. And we felt like we had that with Shelby Harris and these guys coming in, and I think it starts with the linebackers, and then with the scheme we need to just go back to people. I mean, honestly, that's how I would rather do that than watch them fumble around and mess us up even more and just watch us give up, ridiculous amount of yards to teams that shouldn't be getting more than 100 yards a game.
But it's because someone's just posted in the live chat now, Adam, that it's not the X's and O's, it's the Jimmys and the Joes. But is it really that bad? I mean, is it Al Woods, Jefferson, Shelby Harris, Nwosu, Darrell Taylor, Maffei, high second round pick, Poona Ford, Monet. Is this really that bad? I mean, is it? Look, I'm not suggesting that it's a brilliant D line. Clearly, they lack an X factor talent, at least one X factor talent on that line, a game wrecker. They haven't got that. But is that really a line that is so incapable of even stopping a bad injury hit Rams team from running the ball in the first half? Is it really that bad? Or is it just a case of this ain't working? As Robbie said, Darrell Taylor might as well just be a healthy scratch every week for what he's contributing. He's gone from at least being a specialist pass rusher to nothing. Boya Maffei doesn't get any pressures. I've said it a few times. It feels sometimes like I'm watching the team play without edge rushers. It feels like those edge rushers are outside linebackers playing contain off the edge, and it's up to the Al Woods, the Monet, the Jefferson, the Harris to create the pressure. You can't just have 300-pounders plus rushing the passer up front and everybody else is kind of playing contain, and by the way, playing contain badly because they can't defend the run. I mean, that just doesn't seem like a thing. And I know Pete Carroll's defense can be very frustrating, but if it fits this team better, if it fits the individuals they've got, if you can get some good players in the draft, and you can go back to that. And at the very least, you can defend the run better and get a bit of edge pressure on third down. Isn't that a better proposition than trying to turn water into wine with this scheme? Which, we can't do it. Brandon Staley can't do it. Other teams who run the Fangio system can't do it. And there ain't no way that Pete Carroll is giving Vic Fangio a call and saying, do you want to come and coach my defense in the offseason? That ain't happening.
It really stands out when someone like Al Woods wins his rep, like how destructive that can be. And I wonder if the scheme is set up to really accommodate someone that is going to be, like you say, the superstars. And I wonder if they had like a real every down winner, if that might bring the best out of the rest of them. Because they seem to be playing, there's a lot of them sort of waiting for the next bloke along to really be the winner so that they can capitalize and pounce. But, Al Woods had a stop on third down today, I think, to Cam Akers, was a rush to the right-hand side, and he just blew it up. And they just couldn't go anywhere. And, Woods is a good player, but I don't think he's going to be this sort of, 20 sack a year game wrecker by a long shot. But when he's performed and won his rep, it's been really significant how that's impacted the whole defense. And I just wonder, I don't think they're bad players, but I think there's a lot of them that require maybe a star around them to kind of even just win 50% to allow a hole for someone else. It just feels like there's no one really stepping up and saying, just taking command of it. And if you remember in the England game today, Rob, I think one of the commentators said, at some point the players on the pitch have to say, this isn't working, we're going to sort it out between us. And I just wonder if there's that guy on that defensive line at this point that's saying, right, look at me, this is what I'm going to do, we're going to win, and we'll do it as a collective. I think we probably need to see it happen with one more year with a proper wrecker, which hopefully we'll be able to pick up in this draft.
Now, you just reminded me how frustrating the first 35 minutes of the England game were as well today before they started scoring some goals. My biggest worry, Robbie, is, people have been talking about Will Anderson in the live chat. I've spent a lot of time talking about Will Anderson. A year ago, he was unbelievable. You were thinking you were watching like the number 1 overall pick, even in a good quarterback class. He looked fantastic. He had an obscene number, 30-odd tackles for a loss in the season. I think it was something like 17 sacks, 17.5 sacks, something like that. Those numbers came down this year. I have watched all of the Alabama games. I've watched him play every time. He's not been having the impact. He was shut down by Tennessee. And Darnell Wright, who was a right tackle who's going to go early, in my opinion. Nobody else talks about him, but he's a good player. But even so, Will Anderson should not be getting shut down by right tackles in college football. My biggest concern is that they will end up where they are now. Let's say Houston go quarterback and Chicago go Jalen Carr. They'll take Will Anderson, which, is a reasonable thing to do. And he's just going to end up like Boya Mafe. And he's going to end up like Darrell Taylor, because he's a 243-pound at the moment outside linebacker. That's what he is. He's not a 275-pound Myles Garrett. He's not a 269-pound Joey Bosa or Nick Bosa. He's that sort of slighter frame player. And when you watch Boya Mafe go to the Senior Bowl and win 1v1 rep over and over and over again, you think, this guy can rush the passer. Just let him go and do it. And there are so few opportunities for him to go and do that, Robbie. And it feels that way about Darrell Taylor. My biggest worry is they're going to stick with this scheme, draft Will Anderson, which we'll all be very happy about. Yeah, great, Will Anderson, bring him in. And then he's just doing exactly the same thing as everybody else, that you've just added another body to the Nwosu, Taylor, Mafe, Bruce Irvin type group who aren't doing anything, because at the moment they aren't playing with those pure edges. And if they are going to rely on the front three to create pressure, they probably do need the Jalen Carter type to go and disrupt something. I just don't like this scheme, Robbie. I'm not a fan of it.
No, I agree. And this scheme requires, so they're no longer defensive ends, right? They're outside linebackers. And at this point, they're also covering. They're not getting their hand in the dirt and just getting after the quarterback. And this is what these guys should be doing the best. We should have, I'm going to go back to this. I said I've been trying not to, but we should have re-signed KJ Wright. Like, why not? The guy plays with heart. He would have been a much better signing than like bringing up Bruce Irvin. You got a guy who's like, he would have been passionate. He would have been a good leader on the defense. The guy would have been able to get, he could have covered the tight ends. He would have helped in the run game. We need players like that on the linebacker position and let these guys who are listed at like outside linebackers be DNs, get on the edge and rush the passer. And like you said, if you bring in Will Anderson and that's what they do, then it's a wasted pick because he's not going to get used the way he needs to be used. And I know he's having a down year. I think he still has a hell of a lot of potential. And if you go back to the previous year and you see what an animal he was, he's got the potential to be really good. This is also why I think if we're sitting at that number 3 pick, you think real hard about taking, Will Levis instead. And I'm going to say Will Levis because I'm convinced Anthony Richardson's going to go first. Not only am I convinced Anthony Richardson's going to go first, I put $100 bet down. So if he goes first, I win $15,000. So now I'm all in on the Anthony Richardson for first pick. Just saying. Okay.
Well, look, listen. It may well happen. I mean, the thing I was thinking is, when I was watching Stetson Bennett last night was, the difference. If I thought Bryce Young was throwing these passes, we'd be hearing about it all week. Stetson Bennett's another shorter. He's an older quarterback, but he's very athletic. And just saying. And I don't think Richardson first overall, as someone was saying in the live chat, is that preposterous because I put it in my mock draft, my first mock draft last week. I think that when push comes to shove, NFL teams love massive upside and potential, and Anthony Richardson has got that in spades more than anybody else in this draft, quite frankly. And no, Will Levis does not suck, as people are saying in the live chat. We are going to be on for another 5 minutes or so. So if you've got any late super chats, if you want to support the channel, please do. Don't forget to like the video as well. That is very important. And comment in the comment section after the video is published, because it's a live stream that will help get the video out there. The one thing that I wanted to finish talking about is just sort of looking ahead to the games that are coming up for the Seahawks. So a home game against the Panthers next. They had a bye week this week. They beat the Broncos the week before. I'm not going to assume anything after what happened with the Raiders, although the Raiders are certainly one of the hot teams in the NFL. So that, that kind of looks a little bit different, although the Seahawks defense was terrible last weekend. But that should be a win. I mean, it should be at home against the Panthers. Should be a win. If nothing else, that sets up the Seahawks-Niners game in prime time. Prime time? To call Thursday night prime time? Is it still prime time? It was on Thursday night. All I know is it means that I have a really tiring day on a Friday. That's what it means for me and Adam. So, I mean, Robbie, it's there, isn't it? I mean, if the Seahawks could win the next 2 games, they'd put themselves in a good position at least before they probably go and get their arses kicked by the Chiefs.
Yeah, and literally Andrew just said it. I'm worried about their running game. I'm worried about our defense stopping the run. The Panthers, it should be a win, but that's one of those games where it's just going to be absolutely frustrating watching their running backs just shove it down our throat. And it does set us up for a primetime game, primetime Thursday against the Niners, because you need to win. You need to win some of these games, because what happens after that is you're going to the Chiefs, and I'm sorry, I just don't think you're beating the Chiefs. I mean, I just don't think it's going to happen. There's no way. Not in Kansas City, not in Arrowhead. It's just not going to happen. And it's not like it gets that much better. The Jets are playing really well right now, and they're not the same Jets of old, and they're rallying behind Mike White. This sets it up. The end of the season is not. It's not the easiest schedule. This is why I said with the way the defense is playing, I just don't think this is a playoff team. I just don't think they're ready. But anything can happen. Niners are now injured, and they're losing their quarterback. That it's possible, but it's hard to see.
I think we're going to be 9-7 going into that Jets game, which is splitting it from now, which I think is probably wins against the Rams and the Panthers and losses against the Niners, who even without Jimmy, I think their defense is on probably. Yeah, it might be the best positional group in the league right now, and the Chiefs. So it's going to come down to that Jet game. Maybe it gets flexed into a Sunday night game because it's probably one game where 2 teams are going for the playoffs in opposite conferences. I don't know. I mean, if we'd said to you, have a primetime game at home to get in the playoffs, you'd have ripped anyone's arm off for that.
I just got a feeling about that. I mean, like the Jimmy G being out, Kyle Shanahan. The Seahawks have had too good a record against Kyle Shanahan and the Niners to lose both games. And when you chuck Jimmy G out the mix now, and it's Brock Purdy, I don't know. Maybe I know they've got a lot of weapons. They can maybe coddle a quarterback through the end of the season here because of Christian McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle. I mean, wow, what a collection of weapons they've got there for Kyle Shanahan, but. I don't know. Thursday night, Seattle, cold and wet, maybe. Certainly cold and wet in England at the moment, and English weather's pretty similar to Seattle. I don't know. Got a feeling about that one. That's why I want to win next week. I want to sort of go into that with full momentum to give themselves a chance for that to be amped up. And you know what? I can remember it like it was yesterday, that 2012 win against the Niners. I think it was the 23rd of December. 2012 season, they give them an absolute pasting in Seattle. And I can remember going straight to work without going to sleep and being on the breakfast show the next day and absolutely loving and just buzzing off the adrenaline of watching the Seahawks win that game. So here's to potentially another scenario like that on that Friday morning when the Seahawks have played the Niners. So the Seahawks go to 7-5. They are a game behind the Niners now. And a reminder, the Tankathon has pushed the Seahawks up a spot because of strength of schedule. So they've jumped ahead of the Rams pick, which belongs to Detroit. So the Seahawks currently have the number 3 overall pick and a 7-5 record, and they are just clinging on to a playoff spot at the minute. 7th seed is where they are, sandwiched between the 2 teams that drew today. And one of the things we were talking on 5 Live, I cannot believe that they haven't just gone to the college football overtime rules by now to avoid these ties. You don't have ties in NHL. You have the shootout, don't you? You have the thing that they have, the shootout in NHL, in the ice hockey. You don't have ties in basketball, do you? You just carry on playing overtime. Is that right, Robbie? You just carry on playing until it's finished, yeah? You can see my NBA knowledge is not great. Baseball, I mean, I watched that Mariners game that went on. There was 2 games. It went on to 18. Was it 18 innings in the playoffs? It felt like it was never going to end. It was just going to play on. It's like they're still playing now. So why do all American sports, they hate ties, except the most popular sport likes a tie and gives you a chance to have a tie. And I'm sick of it. I hate that little number 1 that pops up on the end. It really annoys me whenever they show Pete Carroll's record as Seahawks coach and there's a number 1 on the end for that tie that they had in Arizona all those years ago. It's really frustrating. I'd almost rather lose to avoid having that. So are we all in favor? They should get rid of the ties and have a college overtime system?
100%. Yeah.
Consider it declared.
Declared. But we've declared 2 things on the pod today, so that's great news. Right, fellas, it's always fantastic to chat and lovely to speak to you today. The next time that we join you, I'm hoping I'm speaking after England have beaten France in the World Cup. Just wanted to say that. And hopefully the Seahawks will have won again against the Panthers to set up that Niners game. Thank you to everybody for listening. Great numbers again for this one. Seahawksdraftblog.com for more analysis. Like the video, comment on the video underneath. If you didn't get a super chat in, but you want to do a super like, is that what it's called? Then you can do that via the little heart button underneath the video. And don't forget to subscribe. Half of you do not subscribe to the video, so please do subscribe. Tell a friend, pass the message on. Good win for the Seahawks in the end, at least, and for DK Metcalf getting one over Jalen Ramsey. Until next time, enjoy the rest of your weekend. Bye for now.